So I'm going to begin with a short meditation. Everybody can hear me okay there? Thumbs up. Okay, very good. And a few people coming in there, so I need your hand there, Brendan. Mysterious hand that just creeps in sometimes. Very welcome to Lee Carroll here tonight for joining us. Delighted to have you, Lee. This is an event we do for Positive Life magazine here in Dublin, Ireland. We've taken our events online, as everybody has now. So tonight we're talking to one of our favorite people, a man who's done some amazing work in his field. How it's going to work, folks, is I'm going to chat to Lee for about 45 minutes, and then we'll switch over and we'll invite the audience then to ask some questions. But I'm going to keep you all on mute so you can text in your questions. It's the most efficient way to do it with the time we have. But before we start, I'm going to invite you all to do a short meditation with Lee and myself. I'm just going to ask you to put your hand on your heart and take a couple of breaths deep into your heart center. And just on the out breath, just feel yourself really sinking into your body. Really feel your body relaxing, slowing down. And feel your energy kind of getting more focused on your heart center. So we're moving from the language of thinking. So we're moving from our minds into our hearts. So we're moving from thinking to feeling. And just as we go through the event tonight, just to kind of center yourself here, kind of make yourself at home in your heart center. So you let go of the need to think, let go of the need to judge. Just whatever resonates with you on a feeling level, take that away with you and simply let go of the rest. And now as you open your eyes, just feel yourself very centered, very relaxed, very much in the present moment, and kind of living from your heart space. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, everybody. So before I start and ask my first question, I'm just going to try a very quick technical thing, because we had a little test earlier on, Lee, and of course, things go wrong sometimes when you actually go to do it live. So I'm just going to try a quick thing here in relation to the live stream. And it should be fine this time. Okay, so I'm going to crack on. That's not working out for me. Okay. You're all very welcome, folks. Delighted to have you. And here we are with Lee. And Lee, my first question to you, I'm not going to get into how it all began because we interviewed you before here in Dublin when you did an event in the Royal Marine Hotel. And so we kind of know that story. And I think a lot of people here would probably know that story. So the first thing I want to ask is, right now, what is your highest excitement? What is the thing giving you, what from your work right now is giving you the greatest buzz? What are you really excited about right now?
I think, oh, first of all, are y'all hearing me okay over there in your studio?
Yeah,
Good. This is a miracle of technology, Paul. I don't know if you think about this, and I don't know how many people are really thinking about this. You're in Ireland, I'm in California, and we're looking at each other like this. I know you're used to it, and I'm used to it, but that really is significant to me that I can now answer your questions and tell the story and all these things and be so far apart. So, just the first thing I want to do is to thank you for contacting me, so I can be with you wherever you, wherever you are, in an office or maybe even a living room. Who knows? But thanks for that. I'm going to tell you I've had to reinvent how I work. I've been doing this now for 31 years. And we have our paradigm, our MO, if you want to say, of how we work. And how we work and how I've worked through all of this is we go places and talk to people. So if I don't know how many of your audience was in Dublin in 2017, but that's what we do here too. And we go all over the States almost every weekend. We're somewhere in here or Canada or the rest of the world meeting people and giving meetings eyeball to eyeball. And suddenly, in March, I think it was, it all stopped. And I mean, all of it stopped. And we couldn't go anywhere. And even to this day, we're not allowed, true, really, to return to what we do. So, like you said, you've all gone to streaming. And it was in my background and fortunate that I knew the people to build a studio pretty quickly here in California that would allow quality streaming. And that's what we've been doing ever since. And to answer your question succinctly, suddenly we've been able to reach far, far more people than we ever thought we could with the same message. It's just we're doing it differently. I miss the hugging part, and
yeah,
we are going to return to that as soon as we can. But for now, just like you're sitting there, we are doing what we're doing completely different than I ever thought. I've had to learn all about social media. I've had to learn search engines, all of these things that allow us to bring this Kryon message now in a different way. That's what's happened here.
great. So, and I think we're all feeling that now, you know, that we're sitting here right now. We've just done a meditation together. Nothing can stop us connecting. Nothing can really stop us connecting. And we're going to do it. You know, we're going to do it. And
Yes.
I want to ask you now, the whole world of channeling is fascinating world to me. I love it. You know, it's a communication that's bringing so much to the world. We've so many channels, you know, and I'm sure Esther Hicks and Bashar and Jeffrey Hope, who I mentioned earlier, just doing amazing work and really kind of raising the vibration of the planet. And you've been working with Kryon now for how many years actually have you been doing this, Lee?
31.
31 years. Okay. Um, as you look back on your 31 years, what are the real standout moments for you where you thought, wow, I've just heard a teaching there that's absolutely transformed me and is going to transform so many people? And what were kind of pivotal moments, maybe at an event or a connection with somebody that Kryon has brought into your life? What really sticks out for you as you look back?
Paul, there are so many of them. The first thing that you should understand when any of us who are channeling, and I know you mentioned Jeff Hoppe, you could ask him that where he actually changed entities. There are so many places that I would love to tell you about, but here's what I want to say is it's not static. When I first started channeling Kryon, it was almost like I was a kindergarten, let's say, that's a word the, that means the very beginning school here in
Sure,
the States.
sure.
it was a child experience. I only got a little bit. That first book, when I look back on it now, to me, it looks like it's cryptic compared to what I do now. There's a growth of all of us, and it continues, where I would say the entity that we channel starts to give us more, and not just more information, but it's almost like the window that we're going through starts to open wider and wider and wider. I didn't even get the information of why Kryon was here until about a decade ago, and that I've been doing it 31 years, and just it's only the last 10 that I have identified the reason why I'm channeling at all. So you see, there are these moments that are personal for me, and when you start going back to, I would say, the events that etch themselves in my mind, I would say most of them happened in Europe. And that's only because you get yourself open to a new culture, new thinking, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And when we went to Russia for the first time, I didn't know what to expect. Now we've been there 8 times subsequently, and in that first Moscow event, I didn't know if anybody was even going to come. We had 1,100 in the audience for that meeting, and I discovered something, that they were so hungry for all of what Kryon was giving them. And then I realized why, is that for half a century, um, I would say just religious thinking and spiritual thinking was actually outlawed. So they couldn't go to church. They didn't have anything they could connect to, and suddenly they could. And what we discovered was this whole thing that we teach regarding going inside, that there's something bigger than you thought, and all was so accepted by them. This is why we kept going back and back. So I would say that was one of my aha moments, is that don't decide what you think is going to happen based upon what you've been told or what you see on the news. That people all over the world are much the same, and that the language barrier really doesn't keep us from giving good messages, because there's always beautiful, benevolent translators wherever we go that really can get the energy through. This is the other thing we found out. We have met so many beautiful people, and the people who translate for us in all these countries and all these languages are much like us, much like you, Paul, interested in consciousness, in getting a message out, which is, the message basically is God bigger than you've been told? If you want to use the word God.
Mm-hmm. So, Lee, I've been doing a little bit of research, obviously, the last couple of days and listening to some material. And what really struck me, a few things stood out for me. First of all, Kryon always announces that of magnetic service, okay? And I'd like you to expand a little bit on where you think Kryon is coming from. Is there a planet? I know it's a group consciousness, but what's your feeling, having worked with Kryon for so long? Where is he coming from? What's his, where does he hang out, I suppose I'm asking. And then I'm also fascinated by his numerology. His numerology of the name is 11. Yeah. And I see 1111 on the clock all the time. I mean, it's literally ridiculous now. 22, 22, 23, 23, 11, 11, 11, 11. I see it on digital clocks. Like, they could be literally, I could see the second change as I get off a treadmill or something. Like, it's hilarious. So what's your feeling there? Where, first of all, where Kryon's coming from, and then talk to me a little bit about the power of the number 11.
The subject could take a long time, Paul, and I want to try to synthesize it for the broadcast. Because what we have discovered is that Kryon winked all the way through this, not telling me what the magnetic service meant. Kryon is not from anywhere. You have to start understanding that we are in a 4-dimensional box that has wheres and whens. None of those things are on the other side of the veil. Honestly, when you talk about multidimensional things, you have to get into what science has discovered about multiple realities and multiple times. Even the atom has something called retrocausality. Now they've discovered, wow, there's something they've discovered within the atom which would question whether time is real. And so the idea of being from a place is very linear. That's 4D. Kryon is an angelic entity, if you want to even use the word entity, an angelic energy, beautiful, from the other side of the veil, which has always been there. And so this is how it has been presented to me over and over. Never been a human being. So it's really like talking to an angelic, I would say, attribute. And that's what I felt from the very moment I sat in the chair as an engineer, making fun of it and having, not expecting anything to happen. But because of some things that happened in my life, I actually challenged spirit. If you're real, show me. You got a minute. And I got shown. This is the kind, there's a metaphor in that in it in itself for all of us. So the answer as to where, there is no where, any more than you would ask Archangel Michael or any of the angelic entity, where are you from? And they would smile and they would say, I am. And that's the answer. So there is no where. It just is. And that represents, I would say, the creative source that we actually talk about. The magnetic part, if you want to know that, I never knew that until only a few years ago. And that had to hook into what Kryon said at the very beginning. I'll try to be concise. Even book one talked about it. He said that the magnetics of the planet, that is what you measure with your compass, was going to shift. And he said there would be a greater shift in the next 10 years, when he was talking in 93 or 94, than there had been in 100. In other words, he said magnetic north is going to move. And people said, well, so what? What has that got to do with the creative source, meditation, my spiritual life, myself? What is, what is this? We got a scientific angel? And Kryon really didn't give much more information in it, but then it did. I mean, if I can just reveal just two things. There was a time when the whales started beaching themselves on this planet, and you might remember that. This was, now we know that they navigate thousands of miles to both feed and mate, and they do it precisely. These whales do. They use magnetics for their migration. They have inbred compasses. Now we know that birds do too. There's something inside them that actually can, find the heading and go there in order to go to a tiny little island, in the middle of one of our oceans. So they're navigating with the magnetic grid. They were beaching themselves because the grid started moving. And so what took them to their mating ground before, ran them into to an isthmus or something. That they got around that because, the ones later, got used to it. But then we had another thing too. Runway numbers all over the world were being repainted. And then you realize a runway number is a compass heading. So we were seeing the magnetic grid start to shift and move. And your compass could tell you that. Now you can look it up on Google. That's science, and it's there. So again, what does that have to do with anything? Suddenly, only a few years ago, maybe a decade, you have Princeton University, you have HeartMath doing experiments that showed that consciousness, what we're talking about today, actually has a relationship to the magnetic grid of the Earth. Now, you can look this up as well. The Global Consciousness Project is one of them, and Princeton did one. And what really kicked it out, in other words, what really cemented this was an event we had called 9/11. They had all these instruments out asking the question, does consciousness change magnetics? And they were looking at the magnetic grid and coherence and all this. Satellites were measuring this very thing. Satellites were measuring the magnetic strength of the magnetic grid in microteslas. So all this was in place. 9/11 hit, and suddenly the magnetic grid almost lit up. It tripled its strength. It moved. There was coherences. You can see this. So this was the first time in history we got to see that consciousness is actually related to the magnetics of Earth. Here's the whole thing. This is the whole payoff. That means, for the first time, our metaphysical view that consciousness might be a form of energy is validated. There has to be formulas. There has to be a way to measure it. And you're going to get to the film. I know you are, Paul. There has to be other things now that you have in physics that you can apply to consciousness and see how it works, it opens up everything that we believe. Can you pray for somebody at a distance? And people would say, well, I think so, but that's kind of an esoteric religious thing. Uh-uh. It's energy transmission. And it is now physics. And this is why I get very excited. So all along, Kryon was talking about arriving on this planet, helping to move the magnetics as a couch for the new consciousness that may come if we would pass that marker of 2012. Is that kind of what you wanted for the first part?
Sure, that's very good and very detailed. Thank you so much, Lee.
Second part. You asked the second part? Numbers are energy, and there's many kinds of numerology. I didn't really get on board with this for a long time because I thought, numbers are numbers. I'm an engineer. I know about numbers. Guys, don't tell me now that there's an esoteric thing. You're like, this number means something. Well, it does. It doesn't mean something. It is an energy that when you then interpret the various systems is very much like you would interpret astrology. Numbers together mean something. And when you start seeing them, you think it's an accident. It isn't. You start seeing them like you are, Paul. You're seeing master numbers, 11, 11, 22, 33. That is significant. The kinds of numerology that you look at is depending upon, which one you want to study. There's the Chaldean, there's the Tibetan, and all of these are different systems, but they pretty well synthesize the same energies. The Tibetan numerology is what I was taught. I didn't go very deep into it, but Kryon has just deep enough to know what Kryon is talking about. And then I made a discovery that really turned my head. Pythagoras, very well known in mathematics, was a numerologist. So here's this mathematician, very, straight ahead guy who I know is probably like an engineer like I was, delving in the energy of numbers. And he was really into it. That kind of opened the door, permission for me to say, okay, I'll look at it too. And it just opened a door that was so fascinating. You start doing the numerology of things using their systems, and it actually paints a picture. One of the favorite things we did was that we did the numerology on our president's name, and we came up with all manner of things that now we're seeing might be there, and in how he acts and how he reacts. It's not a negative thing. It just tells about his design. And that's the kind of things that we're looking at. Master number is very significant, Paul. If you're seeing the 11s, especially the 11s, that it has a meaning, illumination. 22 is actually the meaning of 22, 33, 44. They're master numbers, but the actual meanings, the Tibetans said we're not there yet. They are a higher dimensional learning meaning, and they will be significant to us when we have a higher consciousness. But they all mean something. So we're looking at the highest one is 33. That has been, I think, defined. 22 is all about compassion, duality, solving the problems of the devil on your shoulder and the angel on your shoulder, getting a balance of these things. That's duality, so that you can live a more comfortable life. So in other words, you see 22s a lot. It's almost like Spirit tapping you on the shoulder saying, you're doing pretty good because you're working the puzzle and you are having good results. It's a wonderful benevolent signal. 33, if you start seeing those, has been defined by so many as the highest compassion that we know on the planet. 33. Some have equated it to the compassion of Christ. That is what we're taught is probably one of the highest ones we know. So numerology actually is a very historical, and it means things. And then there's the systems that when you start putting the numbers together that actually tell a story. So you're probably fascinated with it, so was I. As an engineer, I was.
Yeah, it's amazing. The power of numerology, I agree with you fully. It's very fascinating. And thanks for that. That's great. You've given me some great insights there. And now I suppose I want to talk to you about the movie. So it's just recently come out, The Field. And we have an Irish movie called The Field, which is a totally different ballgame with Richard Harris, all about the obsession with land here in this country. So we won't talk about that one. So we'll talk about your. Who's in it with you, Lee, and what's the main topics that were covered in the movie?
We have my good spiritual brother Greg Braden. I think who takes the lead. They can I just tell you a little bit about how it happened?
Sure.
All right. The We had an Israeli film team following us around the planet for 3 to 4 years, making this. They were in Mount Shasta with us. They came to Europe with us. They were in Israel with us. Of course, that's where they were based. Listening to channels and doing measurements. And I didn't really understand what the measurements were at the time. These are coherence measurements developed by the Heart Math Institute, where you can actually measure the coherence of thought between people in a group. And this is now part of the movie. Is the movie, I would say the main subject, if I could synthesize that, is can you measure consciousness? In other words, back to that, is it an energy? And if it is, you ought to be able to measure it. And the answer is yes. Not only that, are there other attributes that are multidimensional of consciousness, and can you prove it? Long distance transmission. You measure something that happens here that you're sending over there and measure it there too. All of those things are part of this film, and it involves myself, Greg Braden. I think it's Bruce Lipton, my team, Dr. Todd Ovakaitis, Peggy Phoenix DeBro, Robert Coxon, Anders Holte. If you know any of those names, you will find out who they are, plus a number of scientists in this. I think it's almost 2-hour film. And the film is the next What the Bleep Do You Know? I don't know if that means anything to the
Oh yeah.
younger people, but yeah, this is a movie this kind of a sleeper that was done many, many years ago that kind of awakened people to energies they didn't know about. And the same is going to be with this film. So we have these powerhouses well, I say Greg Braden and Bruce, and talking about the measurement of consciousness. And that is, I mean, it's time people to understand it's not just something that you feel good. You know, what is your consciousness? Well, it's a feel good thing. Yes, and can you define it? Well, not really. And if I sent my consciousness to somebody else, what does that mean? Well, it means that you're thinking about them. You know, so suddenly it's structured, and suddenly it's patterned, and suddenly we may be able to analyze it to such a degree that it helps us pray, it helps us meditate, it helps us to know how it works, so that we can, if we have wonderful compassionate moments, we can share them, and share them much, much better than we ever have before. Country to country, people to people. First thing I would do is send it to my Congress. You know, it's like, stop fighting. Don't you understand why you're here? You know, maybe you can help us, and maybe we can do something for you. That's how the bottom line of it. So it's not just science. There's a payoff here, and the payoff is it's much bigger than we thought, and we can really, really use this information.
Lee, there's a lot going on the planet right now, and I think that's probably an understatement. Um, what is Cryon's view on what's going on right now? What have you
It's
gleaned from the channelings?
Last November, Kryon gave a slogan for Facebook. Kryon gives a slogan that is a definition group of words for what the year coming. And every November or December, there's a meeting usually, and Kryon channels. He says, "Well, this is what to expect." And it was last November or December that Kryon says the energy of 2020 will be the year of change. So I didn't know what that meant, because there's never been a year of change. There's always been a year of compassion, a year of awakening, and all but a year of change. And suddenly it's here. Now I understand. In many channels, Kryon has said it's on purpose. I think your recent conversations with Jeff Hoppe, I think his channeling gave the same kind of a thing. Here it comes, you know, get ready for it. And it is, if you want to say, you know, did Spirit do it? No, we did it. And that is another thing too, is that when the truth comes out about, you know, what it is and perhaps how it was released and all, that's going to be a little surprising too. But here it is, and we're dealing with it, and the result is that we have to shut the borders, stay home, some of us, or at least curtail the kind of activities we're used to. Um, the impact of society right now has been astonishing. And the impact to Gaia itself. I mean, we're seeing clear skies for the first time, and in places on the planet where they never were clear. Um, we're seeing families coming together. We're also seeing a lot of people fly apart, only because they're forced to look inside where they never have before. In our country, Paul, we're way too busy. Way too busy. We have, and when you take a look at the people at your age and lower, they all have jobs. Mom has a job, dad has a job. The kids are trotted off to someplace else to be watched, until they come home. And then when they come home, the children, they'll go to ball practice, or they go to dance lessons or something like that. So you can go through 10 years and never take a breath. It seems. I'm talking to a lot of parents who say, yeah, I noticed that. Now it's different. We're homeschooling. The moms and dads have to look in the kids' eyes for months and say, here's what I want to talk to you about. The children are reacting for the first time to their parents like they never, ever did before. That has an impact. It will be over soon. But the first answer to your question is, I think, truly, it was planned. Here we are, what Kryon says, a reboot. It's all coming back. We will get back to a normal. It'll be a new normal, and we'll be a little wiser in certain ways, and it may or may not ever happen again. But now we'll always remember this time. For all your life, they'll ask, well, what did you do during the pandemic of 2020? I think we're going to come out of this wiser. Also, in this country, if I can just continue, we're seeing things that we never saw before. The pandemic didn't cause it, but it led up to it. We're seeing things called the Me Too movement, where for 1,000 years we've had the abuse of women from men in the workplace and power and anything, and suddenly it's being curtailed because you can't get away with it anymore. This is Kryon-esque. This is the story that Kryon said was going to come. A higher consciousness will not allow those kinds of things. What's happening in the clergy, where they're starting to be taken to task for things that have been happening for hundreds of years, and the abuse of children by priests. It's now out in the open. It's now being talked about. We have a new pope to deal with it. All these things Kryon talked about. He even predicted the new pope. Even 13 months later, we had it. All of these things are coming together, in my opinion, to create something we did not before. If you're in your country, if you're in Ireland and you're looking at the news, they're only going to show you the bad stuff. That's what they do on the news anyway. They do it here too. And they're going to show you the problems we're having. And the problems we're having are not unusual, because we normally have them, every few years. They'll be, they're talking about the inequities and are the police doing it right, and all these things. Suddenly, they're not letting go. In other words, they're not going to let go of this until there's some solutions on the books that are going to start changing how we select our police, that are going to start changing how we look at each other. They're not going to let this go. That's the first time that's ever happened. I've been through the riots. I've been through the times where the sparks will fly, I'll say, and then it calms down. And then it'll happen again, and then it calms down. This one is not going to calm down until there are solutions, brand new. That is absolutely new in our country. And it follows what Kryon has taught about. There is a new consciousness starting to come up. It's not, people will say, well, how horrible all this is, and look at what's going on, and all that. This is what happens when the dark things crawl out of the woodwork, as we say, and you start seeing what was always there. And you go, ooh, I want to clean that up. It was always there. But now we're starting to see it in a different light and saying, I don't want to live with this anymore. That is a higher consciousness planet.
Beautiful. Okay. And what I felt there as you were speaking was, when the solutions emerge, then we move to those, And what I'm feeling is, like, let's look at healthcare, for example. Not the healthiest healthcare that we have right now in the world. You spoke in 2018, I think it was a documentary, We Are Channelers, which I really liked. There's some amazing people there, and you were one of them. And you said that Kryon had said in 2018 that we were going to see big pharma or structures like that kind of start to collapse around us in a sense. And I suppose rather than talk about the demise of that, we'll talk about this. What solutions does Kryon offer in terms of how do you see healthcare, and indeed, Lee, how do you see it? How do you see the new healthcare emerge? What do you feel will move towards? And also to speak about energy, fuel, basically this new consciousness. What things has he pointed to that you think, yeah, that's really exciting? Let's go there.
You know what drives all of these is large corporations producing the chemistry and our medicines and all that. And you wonder at what point will that shift? That has to shift first. If you have an idea of compassionate consciousness being, let's say, in any healthcare, even a drug company, if you have compassionate consciousness, it changes how they work, what they produce, and how they produce it. And I'm not saying that big pharma is bad. I'm just saying that the consciousness there is actually, and this, I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but some inappropriate big pharma keeps us sick for money. Literally, there are things that they know and could put out on the table for us that are helps for us that they won't because they have to amortize the drugs they have and keep the cures in a drawer until that happens. Then they can put it out. This is unconscionable. This is keeping us sick for money. That is not a consciousness that I want in any healthcare corporation. Kryon says there's going to be the emergence of new substances that will come from the planet that will do things that only the drugs have done so far. That there are things that we are going to be able to do with our consciousness. And he keeps talking about the consciousness of homeopathy. Now, here is a principle that I know Europeans understand and know. Americans don't. We don't really have homeopathy stores. We have people doing it, but we don't have the stores like Europe has. I don't know if Europeans know this, but many times you'll go to the store, to what you'll call the chemist or what we call a drugstore in Europe, and most of the remedies are homeopathy. In the States, none of them are. Maybe a few, maybe two or three, but there's a real big difference. Now, where I'm going with this is the consciousness that there's an innate in your body that responds to signals. That's what homeopathy is. It gives a certain remedy, and your body then responds. Now, that's healthcare. What if we start understanding the energy of consciousness and we can have a consciousness homeopathy and give ourselves the same kind of signals, and we start realizing we can cure disease? Kryon says it's opening up. The first thing we have to do, however, is to get the, I would say, the pharmacy companies that are right now doing it inappropriately to change. And you'd say, well, when is that ever going to happen? And Kryon says it's already happening. It's under the bonnet, as they say in England, and under the hood, as they say here in the States, meaning that you can't see it, but it's happening. One of the little hints we had is what just happened with the company now. I think Bayer bought them, where they were sued with the weed killer called Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
It was an $8 billion suit because they were manufacturing this weed killer knowing that it caused cancer, never told anybody, just put it out there, and of course people are having cancers. They all got together, and now, before, nobody would listen. Before, the money was just too great, and they just paid them off. Suddenly, $8 billion lawsuit, and it's stuck. In other words, they have to do something about it. That's kind of thing that's coming. The population is not going to allow that much longer. And in the process, you're going to see new things coming up. You're going to see a much better idea of how to keep ourselves healthy. I think one of the biggest things that Kryon has talked about is new ways of boosting our immune system, which will do many things. Not only will we have longer lives, but nobody would be catching COVID if we had a system that it's not about creating antibodies to see the disease. It's creating a strengthening immune system that will say, here comes an invader, I don't care what it's like, and you're out of here. That's possible. Kryon says it's very possible, and it is possible even with what we have today. So this whole thing is going to explode. And Kryon said, you're going to see it soon. But it starts with the crashing of inappropriate big pharma.
And of course, our economic structure probably is not the healthiest either. Does Kryon talk much about the economy and the structure of it and how that might be being rearranged at the moment?
A little. What he said, and I want everybody to understand this, because we are, with a lockdown, we have been told don't go out or don't travel. And you can imagine how that works with our economy. Kryon says you're looking at something right now that's going to bounce back faster than you think. And Kryon says, remember, your infrastructure has not been damaged. The infrastructure of the factories, how everything works in it, hasn't been touched. You didn't have a war. If you had a war, all of that would be gone, and you start from scratch. And I'm ask your grandmothers and grandfathers about that one. They'll tell you what the war was like and what had to happen when the cities are gone and the infrastructure. Our infrastructure is still there. So Kryon is saying, when this is over, it's going to start rearranging itself, but stronger. And so that's the answer to your question. It's coming back stronger. But here is the point. He says what the lockdown has done and what COVID is done is to create a weeding out. So the things that should have been eliminated to begin with are being eliminated right now. When corporations start coming back, when even restaurants start opening again, when you start to see it, even the stock market, you're going to see certain things are gone. And the things that are gone are things that weren't working. And it takes something like this to prune it down. Kryon has even given a name for this time, and he's called it the winter of consciousness, meaning we got spring coming. The leaves are coming back, and they're going to come back stronger than they did before. So look forward to a recovery that is stronger than you expect, faster than you expect when this is over. Don't decide even what you're going to do for a living, because these things are all changing. If you've lost your job or what and you're looking to come back to the same thing, you may have tunnel vision in that and say, well, I need to do this, and do this is what I've done all my life. When over here, there's actually something else that has occurred because of COVID. New inventions are coming, new paradigms are coming. So to be open to recovering in a way that's a new normal, even for regular folks who are, sitting there listening to me now saying, well, I hope it returns so I can get my job back in the restaurant or whatever. Say, well, it might be different. It might be even better.
Sure. And I'm going to, before I go over to questions from our audience here, I just wanted to say, you mentioned earlier, we had a brief chat before we began, and you mentioned that your partner has a book, Women of Lemuria. And the reason I wanted to go to this now is because I actually had a reading from somebody here in Ireland who told me I had strong connections to Lemuria. So it kind of triggered something when you said it. But also, do you feel that we've been here before in terms of the way we're shifting right now, that places like Lemuria and Atlantis went through something similar? I hear a lot of talk about people that are back here now at this particular moment in humanity's timeline. We're here before, and we're here before around Lemuria and Atlantean times. Does Kryon talk much about that? And indeed, the book from your partner, if you can remind me of her name, sounds very interesting as well. If you could give us a little bit of info on that too.
It's easy. First of all, yes and yes and yes. We've been here before. Lemuria is real. Even the story of Atlantis is being covered in one place. It's free. It's a video. And I would like to offer all of your listeners to go there. There is a link, and it's easy to remember. It's Kryon.com, uplift. That's going to give you a number of free videos. But the one that I want you to go to about Lemuria is Kryon.com/Lemuria. I think that's right. Is that right, Mom? I'm trying to remember. My partner is actually in my studio. This is
Okay.
live TV. The one that goes actually to Lemuria is on my site. Go to Kryon.com schedule, and the first free video on the top is all about Lemuria. It's free. It has a channel in it. It's a 1-hour show all about Lemuria. Kryon.com/schedule. It's the chapter and verse of what Kryon has said happened there, and it does involve us. In fact, that's where the core information was given. This is what Kryon says. The star seeds, Kryon says we didn't come from anything here. Now that'll get you turn off all your listeners right away. We have 23 pairs of chromosomes instead of 24, which everything below us has. How did that happen? When did it happen? We were in Lemuria, and it was almost a preparation for this. One of the mythologies is that Lemuria was destroyed, or Atlantis was destroyed because of a low consciousness. That is not what happened. That's a great children's story, but it is not what happened. What happened in those places is us learning what we're going to use now as old souls for this new consciousness. If you really want to know something that you didn't expect, you take a look at what the real issues were with the Maya calendar, a 5,000-year calendar that ended in 2012. Well, it didn't end. There's a new calendar there now. If you really got the full story, you'd know that the Maya's prediction was if we made it past 2012, we were going to have to put up a new calendar because the consciousness of humanity would be so much greater. All of that has to do with Lemuria. And so I invite your listeners to go there, Kryon.com/schedule, and you will see the first free video up at the top is all about Lemuria with my partner, Monica Morani. Now, the next time I talk to you, Paul, Monica will be sitting next to me because she is here. She's back in the States now with me. She was trapped in Iceland when she couldn't get back in the States when we were doing something there for 4 months, actually 3. And she will be interviewed side by side because she is my spiritual partner as well as my life's partner and is presenting with me on everything we do.
Brilliant. I look forward to that. Actually, that'd be a great. We can actually maybe do a special on Lemuria next time. That'd be fantastic.
That's
Now
great.
we can go for questions. I think, Lee. I'm gonna go to the chat box here, and I'll relay them to you as we go. So people, feel free to type in your questions there for Lee, and we'll get a bit of a Q&A going here.
So Paul,
yeah.
Paul, if you get one that says what is the meaning of life, just pass it. Okay, anyone. I'm not prepared yet.
So if you didn't do channeling, Lee, you were going to be a comedian, right?
No. I'll tell you, my friend, I was an engineer, and I prided myself on not having to have any social action with anybody.
Okay. Wow. So I have one question here from a lady earlier in Ireland who sent this in to us, and she asked, how can she identify with her star race or star family? Mm-hmm. That was her question.
All of those things are, it's not a, turn your head to the right and eat turnips. And this is the kind of thing that drove me away from metaphysics, was that there was always an answer that didn't make any sense to me. For all of these questions, if you feel you've had past lives, or you're connected to the star mothers, or you want to find out, anything about you and your soul, there truly is the way. And you experienced it from Paul, and he just started it. You've got to get out of your intellect, and you've got to go to drop into your heart. There's a place you can go that you can access all of this. And it's a place that most people really don't want to go, or they go there in such a shallow way. They say, well, I'm not getting anything, so I'm out of here. It really takes you getting an intent to drop into your heart and use your intuition. Now, I'm supposing that was from a woman, because I want to tell ladies, if you're the ones listening to this, and men, just tune yourself out right now. Men, that just aside. Women have the best intuition on the planet. That's why they should be our spiritual leaders. They're the ones who take care of the kids. They're the ones who solve the problems. If a man gets in trouble, he doesn't want dad, he wants mom. Women have the ability to do this better than men. And I think you know this, Paul. To go to a place where they can feel things that are there, and the feeling is the answer. Were you connected? Now, you don't look for chapter and verse and when and even names. You just look for the energy and understand just how benevolent that is. You'll get the answer, and the answer will be not necessarily the third star from the left, but it'll be something so profound to you, you'll know. I even have helps. When When I go to a place where I need to get there faster, I'll even raise my right. Sorry, here I bumped my mic. I'll even raise my hand. I'll even, because it's it's just a physical thing, but it's almost like I'm putting up my antenna, and through the intent of doing even that, spirit sees it, your body sees it, your innate knows where you're going, and cooperates. It's about intuition while you're in that heart space that you even started the program with, Paul.
Sure. And I have one here from Sharon who's just typed in something here. She's kind of making a statement, but I'm sure we can chat with her about that. She's saying awakening. What are the personal signs? She feels like she's developing her intuition, but what are the signs when you feel like you're awakening? What's that? What's that process?
That you watch a program like this, that you say, I've never done that before. What am I? It's about curiosity, Paul. People are starting to look, and they weren't even curious before. Is there more than we were told about us? Is there more than we were told about our magnificence? I don't want to step on anybody's faith. I really don't. But honestly, so many of us were told that we were born dirty. I mean, how do you like that to start out? You tell your children, well, you haven't got a chance. You're born dirty. Sorry, that's what Scripture says. You got to get out of that. Awakening is awakening to an idea that we're more than we were told, and that the story is bigger than we were told, and the whole idea of where Earth is going may be bigger than we were told. And when you start that process of awakening, how do you know? Because you're curious to go here, start looking at things, you start to feel a little different, you look at people a little different, you're starting to awaken. And if that's you, Sharon, you already know that's true. You wouldn't be watching. And this goes for people who have been in esoteric work forever. There's an awakening there, and also for what you call the newbies. I heard the word. So those who would come here not knowing anything, and everything we're talking about is brand new, that's an awakening. So it's not just restricted to, a few spiritual-minded people or esoteric. It's for everybody. The planet, in general, has that opportunity right now.
And we have one here from Colin. Colin is saying that Kryon talks about species with souls and also those without souls. Even on other planets, has Lee any concept of how an entity without a soul would experience consciousness? Okay.
You know, that's a really good question. I haven't delved too much in that, but Kryon mentioned that not every single planet that has humanoids like us was given what we were given, which is the knowledge of light and dark, a soul. And so there are some that don't, according to what Kryon said. I don't know what that would be like, and I don't know what consciousness or not that they would have. But I mean, it's interesting to look at it. I tell people that I want, if you're going to be interested in something at all, that's something you can look at, but pass over, because it wants to occupy your intellect. If you want to occupy your intellect, how about studying what we do have and what might be there? And that's just me being biased in the things that I think are more important. But honestly, that is something that is, you look at it and go, well, if they don't have a soul, what are they doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very interesting, isn't it?
Very good question, Colin. Thank you for that. That's just a bit of a curveball for us there, but nice question. So Janine has said she wants to say thank you to Lee for all you're doing. And she has seen some sharing about old souls and being light workers at this time and how to move through this time. Could you share some insight on this and direct her maybe to a particular book or a channel to explore the subject some more? So the most effective way as a light worker to move through this period.
I think that, first of all, she mentioned old soul. She must believe that she is a light worker. I think you are, dear. And it's a great question, because we're kind of taking the brunt, I would say, of this. This is an energy shift. And the ones who are going to feel it first are the old souls. An old soul, defined, is one who has been here many times before. The whole I think, subject is past lives. Did you know that more people on the planet believe in past lives than don't? You're in a modern society, you haven't been trained in it, and maybe it's eye rolling, but this is the premise, I think, of the first organized spiritual system on the planet, which would be the Hindus. It's intuitive. So we've lived long lives, sometimes short lives, but many of them. It's like a school. And so you have experience. And so here you are at this time, and in there somewhere, in your soul somewhere, this Akashic record, you know better on certain things. And at some level, you expect things. Here comes this change. And a newbie on the planet would not think anything of it except here comes trouble. An old soul will react and will say, okay, at some level, here it comes. What am I going to do? What am I going to do to support it? What am I going to do to even get through it? You have the equipment as a light worker that the newbie really doesn't have through a lack of experience, and you had the experience on the planet over and over. The thing that you can do, I would say, as an old soul, that will create the most is, again, to use your intuition at this moment and start asking the question, do you believe we have contact with the Creator? And Kryon says the Creator is inside you. It isn't over there. It isn't up there. That is inside you. Your soul is multidimensional. It's inside you. It's not on the other side of a wall. Therefore, we can start asking questions. Dear Spirit, what can I do right now to help my family, myself? What can I do to sleep better? Dear Spirit, show me this and that. Dear Spirit, can I control my reality to the point where I can plan on finding synchronicity? Are you ready for that one? Can you control your own future? Kryon says, yes, you can create synchronicity because there's a lot of individuals who are also asking the same thing. That has to do with that study of coherence that I told you in the one field. If consciousness is energy, we can then start moving around so that we won't, be in a place where an accident's going to happen. I know I'm getting crazy on you here, but the answer for an old soul is you're equipped. You're equipped for this. So start asking for it very specifically. That's not necessarily something a newbie, a new soul on the planet would even know how to do. But an old soul, especially a light worker, you would. You've dealt with energy, you've dealt with prayer, you've dealt with meditation. Now, all of that combined is something that we can use. When I sat in this chair for the first, not this chair, but a chair for the first time and said, Kryon came in, I dared Spirit. If you're here, show me, because I'm out of here. That's what I just said. So I returned to that here at the end of the show. This is available. You can actually say, Spirit, show me. I am now ready. Don't be surprised if your cells will ring with that, because your whole body's been waiting for you to ask. This is where we are in a new energy that is not one we're going to have to battle, but one with its arms out, especially for the old soul, who kind of knows what you're doing. And by the way, you're not here by accident at this time.
Very good, Lee. Thank you for that. So we have one here from Mary who was saying she's been feeling very close to family and friends that have actually passed over. Has the veil thinned so much that I am actually feeling them? And when I talk with them, may I actually believe that I'm having a conversation with them?
Mary, they never left. This is one of the themes of Kryon. He says that we're so corporeal that we really don't understand. Even though our spiritual systems say that the soul goes on, it lives forever and all, when the ones pass over, they're gone, and you can't see them anymore, you can't interact, the beauty, the love, all those things are missing. And Kryon says they're only missing because you're told they're missing. That, again, we're looking at souls that are multidimensional. There's a soup of souls that Kryon says is all around us, and a process you're going to love. If you start looking at Akashic processes and what Kryon has talked about, they are such good news. And this is all benevolent stuff. And I look at it and I go, what kind of a system would a benevolent God give us? And it would be a love system. Here's what Kryon has said, and I'll give it to you as close as I can. Mm-hmm. That you, when you pass, have an agreement to stay with your friends and your children till their last breath. And if they choose to feel you, you'll be there. Not corporally, but in such a way that you'll know they're there. And are they listening? Yeah, they're listening. You can have a conversation, a linear one if you want, which is you speaking, or you can have one that is not linear. You can have one that's simply emotional, that you say, thank you, I feel you. My father, who I really didn't know that well, and I was late in life and my parents died early, I see him all the time, not in person, not corporeally, not out of the corner of my eye, but I recognize he's there. I can smell him sometimes. This I know that's a he wasn't a stinky guy. I mean, we all have our individual smells. I know he's there. And if you talk to a psychologist and say, "Well, Lee, isn't that nice how the brain works with you?" I say, you missed it. It's not just my brain. It's my heart. It's my pineal. It's my soul interacting interdimensionally with those people who have passed. So I am on board with what you're asking. It's not only possible, that's the system. We're supposed to know this. The indigenous were great at this. And I will just tell you, because if you take a look at what they did about this and how they handled it, almost everything that they did involved their ancestors. They never let that go. It's in all their prayers. It's in their paintings, their statues. It's those who used to be there are still there. And you talk to your ancestors all the time. You call on your ancestors for help. They're always there. We kind of lost that whole thing. That is the principle that Kryon talks about. Your children will have that same agreement with their children. And Kryon says it's a beautiful system and that you should take advantage of it. So it's very real.
It allow you to tap into such great, support and power each time you make a decision. Go back into your lineage. It's beautiful. Okay, so we have a question here from E. Camp. I'm in the hemp industry and pharma is trying to destroy us so they get all the benefit for human health. Have we any hope? Says Evelyn. She's in the hemp industry.
I take CBD every morning. Does that tell you?
Brilliant.
In the states, it's legal.
Yeah.
Not shutting it down. We have the pharma industry now putting supplements with it. That's what they're doing. They're on board. Right or wrong. I prefer the pure stuff. This is and I don't hope listeners don't turn off. If you understand the CBD and you understand the chemistry, there's no hallucinogenics in this at all. It's the pure plant without any of the hallucinogenics, and it is very medicinal, and it's natural. And so I'm taking it, and there's the States perhaps is a little ahead of everybody. I think that you'll find that this is going to be worldwide as soon as we realize the benefits of it. I'm sorry that you're facing that, but I don't think you're going to face it forever.
Good. Stay positive, Evelyn. Good question. Okay, so Deborah is saying, can we use magnets to assist the raising of our vibration? What is the vibrational sounds and music of the universe she hears, and where do they come from? From Debbie.
Magnets, Kryon has always issued a warning on magnets. He said, if you use magnetic products, like there's magnetic things you put on your body, there's magnetic mattresses, there's all manner of things. He says, be aware that they can be very healing. In fact, that's one of the new healing modalities that's coming, but it's going to be it'll be what Kryon calls designed magnetics, not just magnets. And he said that if you simply put magnets around you, you might find that it actually makes you feel better, but don't do it forever. I mean, if you found a drug that worked for you, when you're healed, you don't keep taking it. And so he said a magnet can just as well heal you as grow a tumor. So be careful. So that I want to share that with you. So magnetics is coming, but I would stay away from the products that and use them. If you have a magnetic product, use them occasionally, but not forever. Don't keep it on your body all the time. Designed magnetics is coming. And that will be when we honestly know the reaction on the human DNA on certain kinds of designer magnetic fields. That is going to be a big industry. You realize there's no after effects on that. There's nothing there. There's no side effects on magnetics when it's designed to work on your body. It's physics. So that's coming. The second part of the question was about the sounds you're hearing. Can I just tell you that one of the things Kryon talks about, and he's talked about it forever, when you pass away, he says at a certain point, your soul your awareness as a soul, will start to hear your name being sung in light. He also says there is a song always being sung in this universe that when you are not here, you know about, and that you can sing it right now if you really could. If it could be transmitted to you, you'd recognize it. It's a song of love and compassion, awareness, magnificence, and it's a song of who you are. And I still think that we can catch that song. And at that point, I'd love to think that that's what you're hearing a little piece of or a part of. That it should make you feel great. It should make you feel loved. It's almost like a signal that says, that veil that you thought was really thick is not as thick as it was. That's your answer. Yes, it's starting to get thinner, which allows us to be closer to a multidimensional magnificence of our soul. That's what is on the other side of the veil. It's bigger than anybody told you. It's not about passing to the soul and realizing there's a judgment somewhere. It's about you're closer to the creative source. That's what's going on. I love the fact that you're hearing some music.
Beautiful, yeah, beautiful question. Thank you so much, Debbie. Um, or sorry, that was Debbie, yeah, absolutely. And now we have Sharon. And Sharon is saying, and I think it's relating to what's going on at the moment, in a projection of reality by a group of individuals with different perceptions, which reality wins out? Some call this reality tunnels crossing over.
The reality that always will win out is the one that's closest to you that you live in. And then and that's not dodging the question. Let me answer it this way. We live in 4 dimensions: height, width, breadth, and time. Einstein gave us the 4th one when they realized time was variable. Now, how many dimensions are there? I'm going someplace with this. And the answer is, who knows? Science used to say there was 11 more. Now they're saying there's 26. Kryon says it's almost infinite. When you get into a multidimensionality, realities start to change. Now, is the dimensionality of a guru in India who can levitate himself, is that the same reality as yours as you walk around the kitchen? And the answer is probably not. So I've just given you 2 realities. I live in a reality when angelic energy talks to me 24/7. So I pass the reality of where I was 31 years ago. If I look back, I'm in another reality right now. Now, I can still walk around in the kitchen, but I'll tell you, I am now broaching, I would say, another dimension, or I've been in that. So the answer truly is that we live in the reality that we choose with our consciousness, and there are dozens of them. Stay away from the idea that you can linearize them. And Kryon laughs at this. You want to make boxes. Kryon says you're in a box, so you want to make another one a box. So there's a reality 1, 2, 3, and 4. What happens when you get out of the 4D reality, which is a box, is you go 1, 2, 3, 4, all. You're then in a selection of consciousness realities, and how far you want to go is interesting. In fact, Kryon says day by day they could shift. How you feel about things, how enlightened you think you are, how aware you are, is actually a shift of realities. Now, you still live in 4 and walk around the kitchen. You see what I'm saying? But you can also, at the same time, be a shaman or a guru. It's just when you choose to levitate. So it's an answer that may not satisfy you. But I laugh because we all, even the scientists, they want to put things in, give them labels, and put them in more boxes. And that really isn't who we are. We only really have one box, and that one box is that 4D box. When we can start to get past it, it's just not boxable.
I love that thing about the multidimensionality. It makes you like you're like a walking remote control. You have access to just dip in and out of what flavors you want to dip in and out of. And about a year ago, people were talking about the Earth splitting into 2. That you would have 2 parallel Earths almost. And I feel like we're living in that right now. We can actually see it on the streets around us. With the levels of fear and consciousness.
Paul, that is actually that's a metaphor. First, can I just tell you that a lot of the visions, channelings, scriptures, all of that are metaphoric. I mean, if you take a look at Nostradamus, it's all metaphoric. If you take a
Mhm.
look at even Revelation, it's all metaphoric. So we're used to getting visions and messages and all of these things in metaphors. The earth splitting in two is a metaphor, but Kryon has talked about it. And you're right, you're feeling it. And what he said is this, that there will be those who start awakening and those who don't,
Sure.
and those who want to stay in an old energy. And what they're going to see is the ones who start awakening are going to start living longer. They're not going to catch the diseases we're catching now. They're going to have a whole different thing than is there. And the ones that don't are going to look at the ones that do, and believe it or not, they're going to say, okay, you're in league with the devil. See, that's where they'll go with this. This is, you know, that
Right.
I've
Yeah.
been in league with the devil to anybody who doesn't, who you can't look up to a higher level. So you see something you don't understand, you say, okay, that's got to be mysticism. It's got to be magic. It's got to be inappropriate. It's got to be evil, instead of perhaps the opposite. And Christ says that will indeed create a separation in humanity, not for long, but that is coming. It has to. That's just part of the shift. There will be those that do and those that don't, with free choice.
You can feel that.
And the ones that don't will look at the ones that do and say, you know, you're on black magic here. Tell us about it.
We've got a nice Irish question here from Colin. So Colin is asking me if I've had any experiences concerning the elementals or nature spirits during my life in Ireland. And Kryon has mentioned that Ireland is a very special place for experiencing this type of energy. And Colin is also saying that he knows you, Lee, had an experience in the forests of Tasmania, which he has visited. So from my perspective, and I'm sure you agree when you visited here, Lee, I don't know if you got around to some sacred sites. I think I remember you went to the Hill of Tara, if I remember correctly. But there's a place here called Glendalough, and there is a very heart energy in Ireland that I feel definitely when I get into nature. So I would agree it's an incredibly special place for that. There's a great connection here to nature. And what's your take on it, Lee, your trip to Ireland and indeed Tasmania? Have you connected with the elementals and the nature spirits?
I have. In Glendalough, you know, not, we went there both years, and I channeled, I think, there. I channel everywhere.
That's right. You channeled in Glendalough. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, channeling in Ireland was very, very different, because as soon as I went into channel, I had a lot of company. And that's not typical at all. Kryon talked about Ireland as having a special, it's almost like, if you've heard of the Bermuda Triangle, where odd things happen there. It's about the overlay of grids that Kryon teaches, and about the Gaia grid and the crystalline grid. I'm not going to get into that now. But Ireland has that attribute where things start to be more visible, or you can feel them, because they're not tempered like some of the other places on the planet. So you have an entire country, and it's not just the borders of Ireland. Some of Ireland actually doesn't have it, and most of Ireland does. And then it slops over into some of the adjacent countries or areas, that you are able to sense multidimensionality. Now, the interesting thing about it is, if you have the elementals, you realize, Kryon even said this, you realize that you have the little people. They're always jolly, and they're small, and they're never threatening. They're all, you know, so you think of the Irish as happy people and having a great time, and all the little people, they are too. So you don't have the specter of trolls as much as some of the other countries would. And Christ says this is because when you have elemental, you can see it, and for some who can, and you want to, the perception of multidimensional sight is yours. You won't see what another person sees, even if they say, "Well, look, I see him and he's dressed in red," and they say, "No, no, not really. He's got a plaid or something like that." You won't even see them the same, because your own consciousness shapes them for what your consciousness is feeling. But it's always benevolent, and it's always happy, and they're small, so they're not threatening at all. Like, you know, a big angel will come at you. And that's very telling. So when I was channeling in these places, I had a lot of company. That's all I'll say about that. Am I able to see them? No. Am I able to sense them when I channel? Some people just walking outside can feel them. I really loved one part of the Irish, I would say, consciousness is that the idea of this is something that goes to your lineage as an Irishman or Irish woman. And even your parliament and even, I mean, your politicians, they also, they're not going to say it isn't there. They even actually move around those energies. You know, if you want to move a fairy tree, good luck. If you want to get a law that you're going to remove that fairy tree, good luck. Because even those who making the laws are going, I don't think so. So that is a lineage that acknowledges, I would say, the magic that is Ireland and the things that are there that are multidimensional. That's that part of the answer. The next part of the answer is what happened to me in Tasmania.
Mm.
I don't know why in Tasmania it happened instead of Ireland, but I got to see the elementals in my own way for the first time. I'm not a sensitive. I actually um, asked Kryon, I said, why is it that all these people around me, these light workers and these old souls that I meet, they're sensitive. They can see colors and they see the little people and they see all that. I don't see anything. I'm the channeler, And I was going, Kryon, is it possible someday that I would be able to see these things? And Kryon, and I remember the answer. He gave it to me in the shower. He said, with what you do and where you go, are you sure you want to? And then I realized that would be really distracting because I'm in all energies all over the planet. So what happened in Tasmania was a gift. And I think it had to do with my partner because that was one of her favorite places. She's Australian. Tasmania is the bottom of Australia, and it's just a gorgeous, beautiful, pristine place. We went down there to an untouched rainforest. Had pathways built into it, and for the first time, I got to see them. And they appeared as lights that would not go away, that danced around, that I could not focus on. So they would come, I'd look, they'd leave. But they were there every single time. I even tested it. It's are my eyes bothering me? Oh, I'll look again. I'll shut my eyes. I'll open my eyes, and they were always there. So I know I got to see them.
So we're getting close actually to our last question, our last couple of questions. So Brendan, who was speaking to you earlier, had a question about, he said in a channel before, Kryon had mentioned that we may have another ice age and that we, not to fret about it too much because we would have the technologies to deal with it when it came along. But the whole issue of climate change and all that kind of stuff, which has caused a lot of fear on the planet for people. What's Kryon's take on that?
He's there's many channels on it. Not only are there many channels on it, there's now validation on it. Kryon always said from the get-go, you are moving into a climate change that will result in a colder Earth. And he said, it's happened before. Don't get alarmed. He said, if you'll study the ice cores, the tree rings, you will see a pattern within a pattern. It's not a major ice age, it's a mini ice age. It just means that it's going to get cooler. Then the studies of Greg Braden, and he talks about this as well as a scientist, he has said over and over, he said, if you take a look at what the ice cores say, he says it gets warmer before it gets colder, and it always has. Here we are. And that is the global warming frightening things that we're being told. It's getting hotter and hotter, and we're going to burn to death. And then the other side of it, no, it's getting colder and colder, and we're going to freeze to death. It's neither of those. We're headed for a cooler time. It may seem hard if you're sitting in the northern hemisphere and roasting right now like we are in California, and with temperatures we haven't seen for a while. You're going to say, Kryon, you're crazy. It's not going to get cold. Just wait a while. I think the last time Kryon talked about it, he says you got almost 30 years before you really honestly go, it's getting colder and colder. The reason Kryon talks about this is he says that your energy grids as they exist right now, as we sit here with our electricity, are going to fail. And he's right, because we've seen this, we've seen it in Canada on super cold things where it fails. People are die because they can't get in it. You get freezing rain, and you can't get out, you can't move, nobody can come get you. And that's when Kryon says, but right now on this planet, you're starting to see the change he talked about. You're going to see engines to create electricity that are specific and domestic, and each house can have their own electricity production. Every building can have their own electricity production, so the grid will not be necessary. The pushback that we have always gotten is an old pushback that says that's not going to happen, because if an invention like that occurred, the electric companies would snap it up and they would kill the people that had it so they could continue producing electricity. Do you know who's most interested in this? The electricity companies, because they know it's not going to work. Right now I'm in California, and right now we've had a lot of high temperatures, and you may realize that we're still on fire to a certain degree. Lots of evacuations. Same thing happened in Australia. And the thing that we are experiencing, rolling blackouts. There's not enough electricity for us to all run our air conditioners at the same time in California. So you see already there's an acknowledgement from the electricity companies it's going to fail. So that's why Kryon talks about the weather change, not to be prepared for cold, but he says get ready to change your paradigm of staying warm. You're going to have the electricity you're going to need. New inventions are coming that are going to bring it to you. If you want to see something startling, Kryon.com/uplift has a number of free videos. One of them is with my friend Colin about the future of the electricity on the planet and the grids. And you will see it's already here. It started. So that's the weather discussion. It's not about, you know, an alarming message about the weather. It's an alarming message about changing the way you get comfort and stay warm, so that you'll be safe.
It's you know, a common thing on the planet that a lot of the diatribe that we hear is kind of fear based, but actually we're just being invited to embrace a new solution, you know, embrace a new way forward. And you know, you see it in your own life in small ways when you make decisions, but on the grander scale it's the same thing. We're being invited to move into a new space. And this has been a great conversation, Lee. I think people have got a lot out of it. I hope they have. And I've really enjoyed listening to you, and it's been a wealth of information. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. It's been a real pleasure. I hope to see you back in Ireland when we can meet again. Is there plans to tour in 2021? And I suppose before we finish, just to tell people what's coming up or what they can avail of. I know we talked about the movie earlier on, but is there courses or online things they can jump onto? What can they do to connect with you more?
It's all on Kryon.com, and you can, if you want to skip right to it, it's Kryon.com/schedule. And yes, we are just now starting online things. There will be courses, but you ask about the touring, you ask about us coming back. We've had to cancel or postpone, I would say, all the tours that we were going to do this year. We love to come to your area. The whole idea of coming to England, Scotland, Ireland, that will return. We will come back at whatever year it is. We also want to go to Egypt again and France again in the Qatar country. We love your area and the whole European energies, and so we're not going to stop at all. So yes, we are. Just watch my site to find out when it starts to be able to do it, and you'll see what we're doing.
Okay, Lee, I've actually been reminded here by a lady called Nancy that I missed her question. So apologies, Nancy. I'm going to scroll back and we'll give as quick an answer as we can before we finish. Nancy is saying she has heard that we choose who will be our parents. Is it so always? They will always be the same? Question mark. Or we decide when they can be others. How does she understand the disconnection with the parent? Why does she have such a disconnection with her parents if she chose them? Okay.
Because Nancy, you did choose them. At some level, they may have chosen you. There's a disconnect because you came to teach them, Nancy, and you know that. And whether they paid attention or not is their free will. So you came to show them something they might not have known, and they're pretty resistant to it at the moment. They may be resistant to it all their life, but this is why you came. So it's almost an agreement between individuals in a family. I mean, those light workers who say, I would never have picked this family. What are you talking about? Right? Yes, you did. And you picked them for lessons. You had something for them, whether they've chosen to see it or not, because you are an old soul.
Brilliant. Nancy, I apologize for missing you there. I hope we got that answer in for you. So just as we finish now, thank you so much to Lee. Thank you for everybody for joining us. I'm going to just do a short meditation to finish on. And if you'll join us again, myself and Lee, and we'll connect and drop into our hearts again. I invite you to put your hand on your heart and close your eyes. And now I just want you all to get a sense of, even though we're online, that we are connected, a sense of oneness. If you can imagine your heart lighting up and connecting with all the other hearts who are watching right now on this, and see a tiny filament of light going from heart to heart and connecting us all wherever we are on the planet. And now as you're in your heart center, I want you to get a sense of the feeling of our new reality that we're moving towards. A new earth, if you will, and get a sense of how you would like the earth to look, how you would like it to feel. Really build that up in your heart center now. See that vision, see that reality. Feel yourself living in that reality. And get a sense of appreciation for that reality having come to pass. And send that appreciation out now to the planet and out to everybody on the planet and all the people you're connected with. And get a sense of all the light workers now on the planet connecting with you and you connecting with them. And just giving a nod and saying, I see you. I see a like mind, I see a like heart, and I know we're all in this together. Take a breath now and feel yourself grounded. Feel your legs on the ground. Feel yourself, the roots going into the earth. Bring your energy back into your body as you open your eyes. Thank you, Lee Carroll, for the work that you do on this planet. It really is appreciated. We send you love from Ireland. And all the people who joined us here tonight, give yourself a round of applause and stay connected through our hearts as much as we can. And we'll all watch the movie The Field very, very soon. Lee, take care, man. We'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.